My name is Cordelia Carstairs. I come from a long line of shadow hunters. I bear the blade Cortana, tempered steel. When I walk in shadow. When I love in secret. But I slay in fire and gold.
Hello. How are you?
Warm.
I know, right? Okay.
I love this coat. It's very hot.
All right, hello.
Hello. Thank you guys so much for coming. It's wonderful to see so many people here. And we're going to talk a little bit, just a little bit about writing. Mindy's going to ask me some questions that I don't know what they are, so hopefully not too scary. And then we're going to take questions from you guys. So, you go.
Okay, first, I have to tell you that I had the privilege of reading this already, and I love big books, and I cannot lie. Yeah. This book was amazing. I tore through it. There are so many wonderful characters. The ending is going to punch you in the heart, in the feels, so hard. You're going to be dying for the next one. But I enjoyed it immensely. It was absolutely wonderful, and I am going to start off asking questions about this book, Cassie.
Okay. Wait, has anyone already read it?
Started.
Okay, we're gonna do a no spoilers approach. Also, I assume nobody would have read it because you are literally picking up your books here. So we're going to be light on the spoilers. No spoilers. Okay.
Okay, so my first question is that reading this book, it was so well researched. Like I felt like I truly was in London. It's full of these wonderful quotes from so many wonderful English literature. It was Christina Rossetti, who's one of my favorite poets. So I want to know, what all did you do for the research? Did you get to do anything hands-on? Do you do remote research? Kind of give us some insight into that, please.
I did a mixture. I actually started writing this book. This was a very lengthy process of writing the last hours. I started writing it in 2014. I was living in London, and I had a little bit of free time in my schedule, and so I started working on Chain of Gold because I was just really excited about it and I wanted to do it. It was sort of fun, no deadline kind of project, and so I got to do actual on the ground research because I was in London anyway, so I got to visit most of the locations and take photos and kind of get the sense of how long it takes to go from one place to another and all of that. And then, but I returned to the US and I had to start work on Lady Midnight, so I sort of put Chain of Gold aside. And so it was a couple of years before I came back to it, at which point, I think, you would agree, there's a weird feeling, when you have separated yourself from a piece of writing and then you come back to it after a long period, you're kind of it feels almost like somebody else wrote it. And you're like, okay, what was I thinking and how do I kind of get back into this headspace of me in 2014 when I wrote this? So I did go back to London again, and then, but I also I did a lot of remote research, and I had a research assistant, and I did a lot of sort of reading. I tried to read a lot of material that was written in that time period to kind of get the sense of it. But what's one of the things I really love about historical fiction, it was something, when I set out to write The Infernal Devices, I didn't know how I would feel about doing all that research, and I really, really loved it. So I was actually really excited to do it.
So do you feel like research is a way to avoid writing? Because that's kind of how it is for me.
It's like a way of procrastinating where you feel like you're working, so that's always the best kind of procrastinating, because you're like, I'm doing a thing.
Exactly.
But it actually does give you ideas. So, sometimes you're procrastinating. I'd be reading research, and I'd be like, oh my God, you'll never, the buttonhole like the nearest person, and be like, you'll never, believe this new fact I've learned about the Edwardian era, which just makes people want to avoid you. But, so I think there has to be the point that that you have to like put the researching down and actually get into the story. But I mean, I'm gonna say there was a little bit of procrastinating, but most of it got in there.
You don't spend like all day just naming a character? Because
I found out that the Edwardians were super into nipple piercing, and that took me like a day. I was like, what? How is that a thing? Is that a thing I should put in the book? How is this? Does she know how to sterilize needles? It was very weird.
Spoiler alert, that needs to be in the book.
Tessa should get a new nipple piercing.
Yes.
We'll get there. We'll get there, right?
There could be a scene.
No, I feel like Jessamine would have like, oh, she was.
Okay, so I really am interested in your writing process. As a writer myself, that we talk about how there's a spectrum between pantsers, or people that just kind of fly by the seat of their pants, and people that plot or outline. Where do you think you fall on that spectrum? Kind of how do you attach that, especially in a book like this where there's multiple points of views? Like I imagine there's a lot of, you have to answer questions about who's the best person for this scene and those kinds of things. Could you talk about that a little bit?
I am a plotter. I'm like the king of if there was a war between like the plotters and the pantsers, I would be like leading the army of the plotters. It drives me nuts not knowing what's gonna happen.
Okay.
So I usually outline every book, outline the series. So I'm like, okay, here's pretty much a general idea of what happens in each book. And then I take the first, the book I'm gonna work on, outline the whole plot, then break it down chapter by chapter, and break those chapters down by scenes and outline every scene. So I know every single scene and the point of view of the person who's going to be telling it. Sometimes that'll change. Like I was just turned in the second book in this series, and I had gone, over it, and there was one scene that was really bothering me, and I was like, this is from the wrong person's point of view. So I rewrote it from another person's point of view. So that stuff happens, and things change. Even no matter how careful your outlining is, things will always, I think, change as you go through it, and you think, well, actually, this seemed like it was going to work, but in practice, it's not working, or this isn't going to work for this reason, or this emotion that this character is having. So you'll alter it, but I feel like for me, I need to know. I think there are some kind of writers who need to know where they've been to keep going, and I need to know where I'm going to keep going.
That's really interesting. So on that, when you're setting up your books, I feel like Chain of Gold, the main character, of course, is Cordelia, but also James, and we're following their arc. So do you change those from book to book? Like in the next book, is it going to continue to be their, it's their main arc. Obviously all the characters gets plenty of stuff. But I'm wondering, I guess maybe what I'm going at is, will Lucy get to be a main arc soon? Because she was my favorite character.
Oh, that's because she's a writer.
It's because she's a writer. She's adorable. I did love her. No, I'm just saying, do you make those decisions ahead of time, or do you feel like
I do, and I think people who've read my books know that I'll pretty much stick with the main characters and will follow them, because I think of the book as like if it's a trilogy, it's like a tripartite book. It's part 1, part 2, part 3. It's all one big story. So this is the first third of Cordelia's story. Then we'll get the second part and the third part. But a lot of times I'll add in more. I'll expand out a little bit more to include more point of view characters and a bit more from the other characters. So we'll definitely see a bit more from Lucy in the second book. But I feel like with my first book, I kind of want to focus in tightly and then expand out.
Okay, great. So this is a writerly question. So I myself, I know other writers do this, we put in Easter eggs or call-outs to other pieces of work that we like. Like, for example, you have a cat named Church, which I'm going to assume is a shout-out to Stephen King and his church from Pet Cemetery?
No, but people have mentioned it to me, and I was like, maybe, it was in the back of my head somewhere, because there is a scary undead cat named Church in Pet Cemetery.
Pet Cemetery, yeah.
Which I totally read when I was little, and it scared me. So it's possible that it was in there. But originally the cat's name in the book, I'm trying to remember. Originally, they were just calling the cat the church cat because it lived in the church, and I was like, this is boring, cat needs a name.
So I called it a church. So it's really not the Great Church. So I should probably say it's an homage to Pet Cemetery.
To your gold specifically, are there some homages? Like, for instance, when I hear Cordelia Carstairs, I think Cordelia Chase, which I'm probably revealing my age, so from Angel, Buffy.
Oh, Cordelia, yes!
Or Cortana, of course, I'm a gamer, so it makes me think of Halo, and Cortana is a character in Halo. Which...
I did not know that.
Okay. Oh, I'm so sad. But do you do that in other ways? Could you share an Easter egg or two, if you have them?
You mean like stuff that's sort of
An homage.
an homage to something else?
Yeah, do you do
I mean, yeah, definitely. I mean, Cortana, because Cortana to me is this legendary sword, you know. So there are little pieces of mythology that are stuck through the books. In the first book, Hodge has two ravens that are called Hugin and Munin, and those are actually the ravens in mythology that belong to Odin, the Norse god, and they means thought and memory. So stuff like that is, you know, like I try to pull on like mythology that, because sometimes, you know, I always liked it when I was reading, like, and Neil Gaiman does this a lot. If you've read his books, you'll be reading along and then suddenly there'll be some, you know, thing and you'll be like, oh yes, I know that myth or I know that legend. And I always think that is cool and that you kind of want to, like, when I'm doing fantasy, you want to pull in that resonance of that. Because the sole theory of the books is all the stories are true. So in some way, all of this stuff really happened, those ravens really existed. And so, you know, to me, it kind of underlines that idea.
That's cool. Well, I do a lot of that, so maybe it's just me. So.
No, my mind is just blanking. I mean, definitely. I'm just like, yeah. I mean, yeah, like Matthew's dog Oscar is named after Oscar Wilde. Like, you know, I like reference stuff that I really love.
I love Matthew too. That's cool.
I'm glad you love Matthew.
I love them all.
He's kind of a disaster.
He is. He's the one. He is a disaster.
We love a beautiful disaster, right?
I just want to like rescue him.
Everyone wants to rescue Matthew. Magnus wants to rescue Matthew. He's like, spoilers. He meets him. He's like, this is not going to go well.
This is bad. Okay, so we're talking a lot, of course, about, you know, the Shadow Hunters, and I know you have an adult. Let me be careful where that's going. You have an adult fantasy novel coming soon.
Yes.
And is that in a different world? Is this a new world, or is it?
No, it's a completely new world. So it's called Swordcatcher, and it comes out next year. So look for it. Because I'm very excited about it. It's a fantasy world that I've been working on for many years. You know how you like get a world in your head and you like poke at it for a really long time and like fill in like 9,000 different cities and like, you know, the names of all the streets and all the cats that live on all the streets.
Are they all church?
I mean,
They should be.
they're all Persian cats. It's a weird world. I've not included any cats so far, though I kind of wanted to include a cat, and then I thought, would that be too much like George R. R. Martin because he has Sir Pounce? And I was like, maybe I should not include a cat. Maybe it should be like a sugar glider. And then I was like, that seems pretty weird. Roll that back. And the king had a hamster. His name was Sir Hamster. I really did have a hamster named Hamster when I was 9. I was really bad at naming things, so I got better at that.
That's all right.
So Swordcatcher takes place in an invented world and it's a city called Castellane that's like a big melting pot of cultures from all over this imaginary world, and it deals with it's from the point of view of 2 different characters. And I don't know how much I want to tell you about it because I don't want to bore you about something that you don't know, but I'm excited about it. It's really been fun to kind of make up my own world and write about this sort of, you know, princes, kings, criminals, magic, and all of this like really fun stuff. So I'm excited about it, and I don't know if there's anything specific you want to know.
Well, you've written how many books in the
17 or something.
I thought counted more like 20 some if you
I don't
counted
think it's
all
that
of
many.
them.
I guess it depends. Depends if you, I mean, I count co-written books, right? So, yeah, it's like 19 or something.
And is this your first one outside of that world?
No, I wrote the Magisterium series with Holly Black, and that was a different world. That was really fun, but that was middle grade, so it's interesting because for middle grade I had to like kind of pull out of like thinking about things in a YA frame and think, you know, younger. And so for Swordcatcher I had to once again like move back from YA and think older.
and like what makes something a YA book, what makes something an adult book.
Hot, steamy romance.
I mean, many, it's just wall-to-wall sex scenes, just, yeah.
Oh boy. That went somewhere we weren't gonna go.
That was very false advertising. But whatever sounds good. No, because people are always like, just it gonna have a lot of sex, and I'm like, there's some sex, but like that's not what actually makes it an adult book. I think it's to me it's what the characters care about and what they're interested in. Like these, when I'm writing young adult books, it's very much about characters who are finding their place in the world, and this is more about characters who have already found it. And what do they do with the position that they have? These people have jobs, they have careers, they have, quote unquote colleagues, if like other princes of neighboring kingdoms are your colleagues. So it's, so they have children, so they have a different set of concerns, I think, and different interests. And that to me is what makes it a grown-up book.
Is it going to be a series?
There's 2 planned right now. And then if we're, feeling it, we keep going.
That's so exciting. So my last question before we do our lightning round is, you have accomplished so much as a writer, you're extremely successple. Is there anything left on your writer bucket list? And if so, what would that be?
Oh man. There are people I would like to co-write with. I think it would be really fun.
Are you allowed to share? Is that too personal?
I don't know, it's kind of embarrassing. It's like me being like, I think they're cute. Like in a writing list.
You're talking about me.
I mean, we just met, but I know it's very sudden. I'd like to co-write with Rick Riordan, so you should all tell him.
Yes!
Get on Twitter, guys.
I love Rick. He's awesome.
That would be awesome.
It would be really fun. So there's a ton of authors I'd like to do. I think I think we all have like projects we'd like to do. Like I'd like to do horror, like something really scary. That would be super fun. And I'd like to write a movie. I'd like to write a movie, so like an original movie screenplay. And I've never done that.
You've done any screenwriting at all yet?
I've written pilots and stuff like that. I'm not allowed to talk about it. But yes, and it's fun. And so it kind of made me think like it would be fun to do, because a TV pilot is really different structurally than a movie, so it just made me think like would be fun to tell a whole story within like the framework of a screenplay. So
Is screenwriting something you'd want to do like with a group of writers? Because I know a lot of screenwriting tends to be.
Well, movie screenwriting you mostly do on your own, and TV screenwriting you do with a big group of people. So both appeal to me because I do a lot of my own writing, but with my friends nearby or with me, and like we often work as a group and we bounce ideas off each other. So I feel like I really love that part of the process, and so that would be a fun thing about being in a writer's room if you were on a TV show.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
with
collaborative.
You. Yeah, like I guess you're there with Holly and all your cool
Yeah, we
friends.
usually talk through. We look at each other's stuff. We talk through all of our stuff. So yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, if I could, totally staff my own writer's room. So if somebody feels like giving me a TV show.
All right, we're going to do lightning round, and we're going to open it up to Q&A. So these are going to be fast, this or that questions, and then we will wrap this up. 2 questions. That did not sound very well thought out. Okay, if you could have a superpower, what would you have? Fast, guys.
Teleporting. I hate travel. I like travel. I like going somewhere. I just don't like getting there.
Yeah.
Would you rather encounter a hungry ghost or one of the demons from your books?
And one of the demons from my books, because I feel like I know how to handle them.
You could just write them out of existence. Hardback or paperback?
Hardback.
TV show or movies to watch?
TV show.
Sam or Dean? At least it wasn't
I haven't seen Supernatural since like season 3. No, I'm trying to remember which one of them is which. This is very embarrassing. Which one has all the hair?
Sam.
Oh, him.
We cannot be friends. I'm so sorry.
Her respect for me has plummeted.
No, it was starting off so well. Now it is over. Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Wars.
I don't like
Milk chocolate or dark?
milk.
No, you can't.
No,
leave me.
no,
No peer pressure. Dark.
All right.
Actually, that's my tour food is Hershey's Special Dark Chocolate.
She might have redeemed herself. We're heading this way. Same. Cats or dogs?
Cats. I have 3.
I think we
Like,
probably
if I said anything else, like they would know. They would have their revenge on me.
like if you die in your house, they'll eat you.
I know, but that's cool.
That's the way to go, right? You can live on forever and forgets. Pancakes or waffles?
Waffles.
Spring or fall?
Fall.
Tea or coffee?
Tea.
Very London of you. Very English.
I play with Holly about this like nonstop. She likes coffee. I like tea.
All right, we have reached the most important question of questions. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
I'm allergic to pineapple, so no. I got out of that one.
Oh, she dodged a bullet. All right, we're going to go ahead and open it up to questions. I don't know if there's guidelines on that. I think there's microphones that'll walk around.
Whoever asks the first question gets a prize.
Oh.
Hey.
You got a big one, Cassie. 'cause-
All right. There.
Hi, my name is Leanne. Just out of curiosity, now that you've written so many books, do you find it easier to speed up your writing process? Because you produce such great quality content consistently throughout your books, but it feels like they come out at such a rapid pace.
I appreciate that you said that because I don't think my publisher feels that way. I think yes. Like for the first time that I wrote a book, I had to teach myself how to write a book, and that was a much slower process. And I think with each book, I've learned more about how you write a book and how you shape a book. And I've also become much more of an outliner. Like I did not tell Mindy this because it's horrifying, but my outline for Chain of Iron was 60,000 words long. So having created a 60,000 word outline, you can write a book pretty quickly because you know everything that is going to happen. So what you're working on is the emotional calibration and, you know, what's happening with, you know, kind of inside the characters, their arcs, but you know the plot. And it actually, for me, does help and make things quicker. So I think it's a process of having sort of learned how I can write with more focus and more quickly without, sacrificing quality.
60,000 words is like the length of a middle grade novel.
Yeah.
Just to give you, if you're not writers, to give you an idea, that's a lot of words. I'm impressed.
It's long.
Like I wasn't.
I was actually horrified when I actually looked at it. I was like, oh my god, this is 60,000 words long. This is this is like the first book of Percy Jackson. It was long. Mm-hmm. Okay. But you want to go from, that there, corner.
Hello, I'm Stephen Park. I'd like to know what your original inspiration for Jace was.
I think just I had a long-term weakness for sarcastic blonde men in books and movies. So I could list like a lot of them, but if anyone's ever read the Dorothy Dunnett books, Frances Lyman, it was a huge inspiration, but they're also like, it's a trope, you know, the sarcastic blonde guy who seems like a jerk, but actually he's not. But I always loved it. So, Dorian Gray from Picture of Dorian Gray, and so I think when I went to create Jace, I took all the bits and pieces in my mind of things that I liked and kind of put them in a blender with some, stuff that was just specifically, stuff that I loved, and that was my big inspiration was I wanted to kind of combine all the things that I loved in fictional heroes. Okay, yellow sweatshirt.
I'm Brittany. I want to know which characters would have nipple piercings.
That would probably be Matthew. I don't think he would plan it, it would just happen. All right, so from the back. All right, stand up. Can you stand up? What? Anyone back? Yes, okay. Just because otherwise all I can see is arms.
Where are you?
Yeah.
I'm going to pass the mic back to her. Go ahead and take it.
I like to see
I
cooperation.
appreciated that voice, by the way. Thank you. Hi, I'm Stephanie. I guess with the question is the timeline for the books. When you're writing, do you just think, like especially Magnus, when he's dealing with the modern New York shadow hunters, you're thinking, you know what, this would be a good backstory for why he's like this, and you save that idea for like the Chronicles of Magnus Bane, or something like that?
I mean, I had notes on kind of Magnus and pieces of his backstory when I went to write the Bane Chronicles, but it was also, I went back and reread all the books and kind of looked for places where there was like a gap in something that we knew about Magnus and thought about like what the best way was to fill that in. So like a little column A, little column B. And it was really fun. Okay, back there. Behind you.
Hi, my name's Morgan. Did you use yourself for inspiration for any of your characters?
Not really. I mean, I think that we're always all of our characters. You know, we write them and they come out of our brains. So they always, I think, have little pieces of us in them, but there's no character I can think of that is specifically me. You know, like Lucy's a writer, so that part of me goes into Lucy, and you know, Tessa loves books and Will loves books, so that part of me goes into them, but I've never thought of any of them as being specifically like me, maybe because I do not find myself that exciting.
So back there.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Maria. The question I have for you is actually two parts. Who is your favorite character, and who's your favorite character specifically to write about?
I mean, it's really hard for me to pick favorite characters. I love them all in different ways. So I would say that the characters that is most like me, since it sort of connects to the previous question, is probably Simon. You know, he's a mundane, he's Jewish, he gets into the Shadowhunter world, he's immediately killed. Not what happened to me. And the character that's the most fun to write is probably Magnus.
Okay, so back up front.
Hi, my name is Stormy. And I have a question. You said that you would want to write a script. So how actively were you involved in the CW series?
It was a freeform series.
I'm sorry, my
It's
mistake.
okay. I don't care. I'm zero.
Oh, really?
Zero.
You
So
can tell.
I never wrote anything for them.
You can tell.
Yes.
If you could pick your weapon of choice if you're in the Shadowhunter world, what would you use?
Oh man. I think I would want. Well, in the last hours, there's a gun that works, which I like because you could be at an enormous distance. But that only works for one character. No, because I kind of wanted to limit the use of guns in these books, but I kind of like the idea of one that only worked for one person. So I think I would go with bow and arrow because again, you get to stay at a distance. I'm not into close-up fighting with demons. They're very gross and squishy.
Okay. So, is it possible that we would ever see Dark Artifices as a movie or a TV series?
I don't know. The question was it possible we'll see Dark Artifices as a movie or a TV series? I don't know. I'm in the middle of sort of renegotiating my contract with Constantine, who owns the rights to the Mortal Instruments and Infernal Devices, and they did the movie and also the TV show. And I did not love the TV show, and they know that. And we also had a lot of sort of, I'm trying to think of how to say this. We had disagreements about how it should go, and the first showrunner, Ed Dector, was on the first season and then was removed off the season, and then they brought on 2 other people. And during that whole process, they actually asked if they could buy the Dark Artifices, and I was like, no.
You can't. When the show was over, they came back to me and they were like, well, now would you think about selling us the Dark Artifices? And I was like, yes, but we're going to arrange a thing where I'm actually going to be involved.
Yeah.
Because I've had a range of different friends who've had different involvement in shows and movies, and I just feel like, in general, when the author is involved, you get something that cuts more at the soul of what the story is about. You always have to make changes, but I remember them coming to me at some point at the end of the first season, and they were like, why didn't you tell us that if we woke up Jocelyn, we would have this huge problem, which is that now she knows who Jace is, so now we have absolutely no idea what to do, and we're going to have to kill her. And I was like, well, because you never asked me. No,
Yeah,
I didn't know you were going to do that. So I think when you are involved as the author, you can kind of be like, well, here is this thing that's going to happen, or this other thing that you might not know is important, but it's going to be important later. So anyway, we are working on that, and when we are all worked out with that, then we're going to try to, figure out what the next project is, be it Infernal Devices or Dark Artifices or whatever. So.
Okay. Hi, I'm right here.
Yes.
Okay, so I was wondering, what the inspiration for Will's curse was, and also why ducks.
So wait, sorry. The inspiration for Will is what?
Curse.
Oh, I thought you said purse.
That too, I guess.
Not recall that. Okay, so the inspiration for Will's curse. There is a really old piece of mythology, and now I cannot remember exactly what it is, about a curse. I think it's probably one of the Tales of the Thousand and One Nights, a curse given by a djinn to a man that everyone that he loved would die. And so I thought, well, what if you reverse it? What if everyone who loves him will die? And how would that work out? What kind of person would you be if you thought everyone who loved you was going to die? And so the idea for Will kind of came out of that. And then the ducks thing is true. It's a true story about a duck, several ducks. I was in London doing research for Infernal Devices with my friend Sarah, and there's a scene in Hyde Park where Jessamine and Tesla are walking, so I wanted to go to Hyde Park and kind of walk the path and get a sense of what it was like. So we go there and we picked up some food on our way over, so we stopped and we bought some pies. And pies in England are not what we think of as pies. They are like pastry, they're stuffed with meat and cheese and like a sandwich and a pastry crust. So we get a bunch of those and we go, we're sitting by the river and we're, chatting, and we had finished our, pie we had left over, so we're throwing them to the ducks in the river. And suddenly Sarah turns to me and she's like, wait, these are duck pies. We're feeding ducks to ducks. You're just like, they're duck cannibals now. So I was like, oh, this is terrible. We can't keep doing this. I never thought about it before, but it's clearly wrong. So we packed up our food, but the ducks knew we still had food. So we started to leave, and the ducks chased us, and they tried to bite us, and they chased us all the way out of the park. So by the time I got home, I made a note, and my note was, ducks are bad. I know people are always like, but why? And I'm like, I have a reason.
You want to pick someone? Sure. We'll go over here. Let's start.
Hi, I'm actually working on my first young adult novel, and I think the thing I'm finding the hardest is when to know I'm done with a section. So what would be your advice on feeling like you're done?
Do you mean done with a part of the book or a chapter?
Part of anything. I feel like I'm writing a whole and I keep going back to it and back to it, or I'm writing a scene and I keep going back to it, and I'm tweaking words or sentences.
Okay, it sounds to me like you're more the sort of writer who needs to know what you've done to keep going rather than where you are going to keep going. I think that my friend Holly Black is the same kind of writer. That's how she writes. But it is always a challenge to actually stop fiddling with what you have and keep going. So usually what she does is write the first chapter, then don't look at it, write the second chapter, then go back, fiddle with the first chapter and the second chapter, then move to the third chapter, go back, 1, 2, 3. So as long when you get to the end of the chapter, go to the next chapter. Don't go back and fiddle until you're done with that next chapter. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Yay! I can give Holly's advice because this is the kind of writer she is. Okay. In the back.
So one thing that I really like about your books, and anybody that I talk to about your book seems to share the sentiment, is there's always at least one character, if not more, that you can really relate to and you kind of just hold on to for whatever reason. And I think that's what gets me so captivated when reading your books. So I was wondering for you, you know, growing up or at some point in your life, was there a series of books that kind of pulled you in like that, or a specific character that just, you know, spoke to you and you kind of take along with you?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot, I think. I remember reading Jane Eyre for the first time, and I really related to Jane because she felt like she was, you know, sort of plain and unspecial. And you know, at that time in my life, I think I felt the same way. And then she goes on to have this sort of very dramatic adventure. So, you know, I've definitely related to that. There's a series of books by Tamara Pierce called The Lioness Quartet. And those were really among the first books I read that were fantasy books that had a girl who was the main character. That was not common. And I remember being like, wow, this is really amazing, because I'd read and I really loved lots of other fantasy. I loved Lord of the Rings and Narnia and the Darkest Rising series and the Prydain series, and those were all like classics of my childhood. But I think there is something very specific about being able to see some aspect of yourself, you know, in someone. And so I definitely remember that. And I think one of the things that's always really cool is that there are like different characters that people relate to, but you know, it's never the same character. Like if I'm asking people who their favorite character is, it's going to be a range, and they have their different reasons. So it's nice to see like who kind of keys into who. Okay, there.
I'm Riley, and if you had to be locked in a room for 24 hours with one of your characters, who would you choose and why?
Oh man. I don't want to be locked in a room for 24 hours. Let me think. I mean, I love a lot of them. So, I mean, if I had to be locked in a room for 24 hours, I mean, I would like to do that. Being locked in a room with Anna would be fun. I feel like she has a lot of gossip, and that would be very exciting. I think being locked in a room with Magnus would probably be fun. I just wouldn't like it. So I don't know, angry Magnus for 24 hours. But on the other hand, like I feel like he would be really fun to talk to. I think I'm gonna go with Jim. He has lived a really long time. He had a really interesting life, and I want to ask him about it.
She could change into whoever you would want.
I mean, yeah, but there's no one to see you. You're in a room alone for 24 hours. You're like, I'm Robert Downey Jr. But no one's there to see you, so it's all right. Okay, let's see. Blue shirt back there? Green shirt? Yeah. I told you I can only see ours.
So I guess,
it's okay, we'll do you next, all right?
I guess I kind of have a two-parter. You said you didn't like the TV series adaptation. So the first part is, were you proud of the 2012 movie adaptation? And out of both adaptations, if you had to pick your favorite portrayal of one of your characters by an actor, who did the best job?
Jamie Campbell.
Wow.
Jamie Campbell Bower.
I feel like this is a question that's going to incite a lot of fights and violence. I wasn't really involved in the movie either, and I think there are things about both the movie and the TV show that are good and things that I did not like, and they are not necessarily the same things. You know, they were quite different. One of the things I didn't like about the TV show was they had a ton of technology, and I specifically constructed these books so that there would be no computers. And so it drove me bananas. And it's just, I mean, it's not going to necessarily bother everybody, but I wrote these books, so I look at them and I'm like, this looks like the deck of the Starship Enterprise. It does not look like the Institute. So that made me nuts. But, you know, I totally accept that's not going to necessarily bug everybody. Whereas, you know, in the movie, which I admittedly now have not seen for about 8 years, I remember they also made choices where I was just like, I don't like, it started snowing in the middle of the Institute at one point. And I was like, why is it snowing? I literally came on set and there are all of these people dumping fake snow onto Lily Collins and Jamie Campbell Bower. And I was like, why is this happening? And they were like, we have no idea. So that was very strange. I think Alan Van Sprang did a good job as Valentine. I think that I should probably not pick favorites more than that. But I thought that Jared Harris and Lena Headey were really amazing. I thought Lena was really great as Jocelyn, and I mean, she's Cersei, so when I met her, I was like legitimately terrified of her. I came in, she was lying on a table, like one of the craft services tables where there's food, and she's just lying there because I guess she felt like it, and nobody was gonna be like, you can't do that. Because she's Cersei. I came in and I was just like, oh my God. I totally freaked out, so that was pretty cool.
And we have time for 2 more questions.
Well, there was someone who stood up back there and...
My name is Samantha, and this is probably a really cringy question, but me and my friends have been arguing over this for a while, and you prefer Malik or Sizzy?
Oh, Malik. Okay, all I heard was Malik or Sizzy. Do I have to pick one?
Do you know
Ask me a different question. I can't pick. I feel it's wrong. Like the ghost of like Malik or Sizzy will haunt me. I love them both. I love all of them. So I really can't pick between them. Okay, so
Last question.
Okay, who has a really urgent question? Wave your arm. That's not urgent. That's urgent. Okay. Actually, behind you. Yeah.
Oh, yay, okay.
You had some good arm waving.
Okay, I know this is, well, first, hi, I'm Sophia, I'm a huge fan. So is my parabatai. But also, I know this is a very, very difficult question to answer, but who is your favorite hairdo if you had to choose?
Oh, no! Will.
Oh, that's hard.
I'm going to pick a little-known hero, Erwin Herondale. We don't know him. I think you cheated. I know, exactly. It's like I just made him up right now. Okay, I cannot pick a favorite, but I can tell you what I love about the different Herondales. I love how much Will loves books, and I love how much Jace loves his friends, and how devoted he is to Alec and to Isabel.
Oh.
And I love how much Kit likes stealing things. Like every time he's in a room, he's like pacing it. He's like, you know, he meets someone, he's like, I could sell that hat. I could sell it for 60 bucks. I love that about him. And James, I love that he is extremely, that he seems like a total sweetheart, and he is, but he is also has a very devious mind, and he is actually able to kind of put together pieces of mysteries very well because he kind of understands devious thinking. So I can only tell you what I love about each of them, but I can't pick one. I didn't like Jace's dad. He was kind of a jerk. Not my favorite haircut. All right, thank you guys so much. If you still have a question, when you come up, you can totally ask, you know, whatever you want. So if you want to know something, just come up and ask it.